why don't you go back to your day job and work that out? And leave those of us who do government to do government, because you can't do both. And clearly you're failing right now at both. Your rockets are blowing up and the government's blowing up. So I suggest you concentrate on the one thing you think you know more about and do that. And leave the rest to those of us who know a little bit of how to provide services to people who need them and make the government function. Not to say that it can't be changed. Yeah, there are changes that need to be made in government, just like there may be some changes you need to do with your rocket program so the ish don't blow up every time it goes up in the sky. Like I said,
back to Simone's metaphor earlier. Remember the we couldn't figure it out. The thermostat, the thermometer, which one you wanted to be. This is also a perfect metaphor, right? For the fact that he is just doing things that he can't quite figure out how to do, and meanwhile, it is real people who are suffering the consequences. All those people whose planes were circling the skies, waiting to land, who could not land because he can't figure out his rocket business.
Come on now, this is not a Tesla factory. This is the United States government.
Well, we've seen the Teslas on fire too. So.
Well, we have actually.
I think
this is the plan, maybe, to tear it all up. That's what
I think the brother needs to do some work at home.
Ooh, well, y'all,
your roof is leaking.
That does it for the weekend.
Really?
Yeah, and we know that Donald Trump came in wanting a fight, wanted to be seen as a disruptor, and the message he took away from the first administration is, if you don't move fast, you get bogged down by the bureaucracy. And that's part of the reason, Willie, that we've seen this speed, but it has led to this legal chaos. And I guess it also leads to the question, a little bit like we were talking about tariffs. At what point does he start getting so much pushback from people around the country?
They won't stop. They won't stop. At what point is he going to get enough pushback from people around the country? Because MSNBC, we're telling you there's a whole lot of people who want to push back. We're the ones who are going to tell you that. Not believe us.
Around the country, elected members around the country, that this is disquieting. We've seen the thing about the town halls. Now, some of that may have been people from outside their own districts. That might not help Democrats very much if they're busing people into these town halls, as some Republicans have said. But it's certainly Republicans that I've spoken to have said, look, there are two areas where if you're cutting parks and if you're cutting anything to do with veterans, then there is real disquiet amongst their Republican constituents. I think Donald Trump's starting to realize that Elon Musk's popularity could be a problem for him going forward. Unpopularity could be a problem for him.
Meanwhile, this to me was one of the more shocking figures that I saw. Made me go, wait a minute, hold on one second. Whoa, Americans on Trump and Joe's efforts. Musk and Doge should influence government spending and operations. Look at this, 54%. The majority say that he and they should. How about approve of?
That was literally an hour apart. That's when you realize at this point we're watching some sort of movie where MSNBC just says whatever they want to say, however they want to say it, and try to paint you a picture that people don't like Doge and they disrespect and they don't like what Elon Musk is doing. And then this shows up.
Trump trying to cut staff at government agencies. Again, you get a majority here, 51%. So yeah, Elon Musk might not be that popular, but these cuts and the idea of spending cuts, at least within the federal government and cutting at government agencies, that actually has majority support. I was truly surprised by this, Kate, but the numbers are the numbers.
Well, there is.
Why would you be truly surprised at that? Your only reason why you'd be truly surprised at that is because you work at CNN. That's the only reason. You're around the same people who don't believe that millions of dollars were spent to, create transformer mice. And so, no, you don't. Yeah, I'm shocked. Did you know? Oh, I didn't know this. Oh, how about stepping outside the Beltway and talk to regular people? And then you'll figure out, yes, we love it.
There is a view that cuts across Democrat and Republican of people thinking that Washington is too big, bloated federal government, waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, those are drain the swamp is what people run on over and over again. How do they feel? What do they think they're actually cutting?
Yeah, what do they think they're actually cutting? Democrats want to argue that the type of spending that Musk is cutting is mainly necessary programs, but that comes in at just 36%. The wasteful spending actually wins the plurality here at 42%, according to a recent Washington Post Ipsos poll. And I think that is the reason why you see that when it comes to...
Notice what he said. Even with these numbers, and you got to get way down to look at this, and you look at it and it's a Washington Post poll. So they can't even manipulate the numbers enough with their bias polls to make it look any better. This is a Washington Post poll he's talking about.
The Musk and Doge, you see, in fact, the majority believe he should have some influence because they believe, the plurality believe, that he is cutting wasteful spending, not necessary programs that Democrats are arguing.
And the other problem is, where was the category? I see necessary programs, I see wasteful. Where's fraud? Did you not, Washington Post, did you not even put fraud as one of the options? How could you not include fraud? It's obvious fraud for anyone who wants to look. And these people are just pretending like the fraud part. Oh, there's always fraud. Oh, we're just supposed to accept it. $1 gazillion. Just because you guys want to stay in power.
Here's the motto. I do like Dusk and Mosh, though. I think we need to keep that around. But the definition of wasteful is, I think, what is really starting to come into play.
Correct.
What people, necessary to one is wasteful to another. We are seeing that and finding that. How are Americans feeling about the size of the government?
Yeah, so what is exactly going on here? What is sort of driving these numbers underneath? Government is doing too much or too little. Back in 2020, when Trump lost re-election, 54% said too little. By the time he won re-election in 2024, look at that. Too much won the majority at 55%. It was the inverse. So I think there's this real push from the American public to want spending at the U.S. government to drop. And I think that's part of the reason why they're giving Musk and Doge that majority, at least at this point, when it comes to his influence over federal government.
They're giving him running.
Are you surprised? I don't know how these people just crack me up. That they need polls to understand. Hey, should we be cutting government? And most Americans who aren't being paid by the government are like, yes, cut it, cut it. I'm sorry, some of you aren't going to keep your jobs, but I can't just keep funding you like it's some sort of government welfare program. It's no longer a job, it's government welfare. Just don't even show up. You don't have to do anything. Just work from home, work your other job, do whatever you need to do. But they're not working. It's wasteful. It's criminal. And you seem surprised. Unbelievable.
Room on this, but that's why I think these numbers show why transparency and what is actually being done, and why the problems of they've made mistakes and putting things up on their wall of receipts that didn't actually happen or not, why that is so important and critical.
I think that's exactly right. We'll have to wait and see what happens. What's popular one moment may not be the next. We'll see.
The American people's money has truly been stolen through an incredible amount of fraud and all types of improper payments. This was actually the first hearing I held, which I think sounded super boring to a lot of people because it was Medicare and improper payments. But the things that they've discovered is how Social Security numbers have been used, and these are for dead people that are over 115 years old, and how basically criminals have been able to take these Social Security numbers, and we're able to get things like small business loans.
So one of the questions, again, I would ask a liberal person I work with or something. Is it okay for someone to be, millions of people at 125 years old to be collecting Social Security? How about a guy 300 years old? Is that okay? And the first thing they're going to say to you is, it's not true. And then I would respond, but let me just hear me out. What if it is? Because why is it that this has become a partisan issue? Why is it that fixing fraud, corruption, and waste is partisan? Again, a missed opportunity, as Chris Cuomo would say, in terms of the Democrats being able to talk to normal people. How can you not be for cutting waste and fraud. How can that bother you? Doesn't make any sense. It'll never make any sense how they don't even want to talk about fraud. You want to make headway? Go sit down with Marjorie Taylor Greene or Jim Jordan or something and just admit, yeah, there's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse. Let's sit down together and figure out where it is. Instead of bitching at big balls and Elon and the data Republican, how about you go meet with somebody and say, let's figure this out. You ever thought to yourself why they don't want to do that? It becomes pretty clear that there's something bad going on, that an adult couldn't come and say, you know what, this sounds kind of weird. I don't know if it's true or not, but let's see where it leads. I'd love to work with you on it. I'm a Democrat from New York, and I'd like to sit down with you and see what we can come up with. No? Why not? Why are there no Democrats? Not one who want to sit down and go through the books. There's a question you can ask a liberal friend. Why is nobody, not AOC, not Maxine, nobody, why, the cue ball lady, why does nobody want to take a look at this? How do you tell the American people, la 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 la, makes no sense.
We get all types of money taken from federal government programs and basically stolen it all. It's an extremely important part of this is any type of Doge cuts, we've got to work into our legislation and work into our budgets and appropriations, and that's a large amount of planning that's happening. I think what's exciting for the American people is this is very bipartisan, and this might be one of the first things that the American people could see coming from Washington, D.C., where we're literally talking about money that is being used in fraudulent ways and being stolen by criminals. And I think
one of the problems is that some of these criminals are people she works with. I wouldn't pass it by any of them that some of this money that's been going to all these NGOs, when they start tracing it back, are going to land in the bank accounts of many Republicans as well. I think the quagmire that we're going to see with this money may involve quite a number of Republicans. Steel yourself for that. Really brace, because that could be seriously problematic.
I think it's something the American people care about. It certainly has been like a number one issue. Basically, the American people have been robbed blind, and it's happening through, improper payments, fraud, and a lot of systems that are just so old and outdated. Computer systems that can't even work together between departments. Some federal government.
That wasn't by accident. You see, by making sure in 2025, by making sure you continued to have antiquated equipment means the fraud is a little bit easier. There's no way for anybody to track anything. So it's not by accident that these people are still using very antiquated equipment.
Agencies and departments are actually hiring third-party vendors to hold their data instead of having their own systems that can communicate within the federal government. In the private industry, unfortunately, there's downsizing that happens and people lose their jobs. We're $36 trillion in debt. The American people can't afford it anymore.
We saw this earlier with Donald Trump. Just a few days before the first assassination attempt, Joe Biden told a group of people that it's time, quote, to put Donald Trump in the bullseye. He ranted and raved about semi-fascist and ultra-MAGA as if they were somehow dangerous insurrectionaries and threatened the republic. At the same time he was saying this, the New Republic ran a cover story of Elon Musk as Hitler with a Hitlerian mustache. Remember, we had retired generals who said he was Nazi-like. He was equivalent to people who had set up the concentration and indeed death camps at Auschwitz, and he was synonymous with Mussolini. And what did that do? That lowered the acceptable the acceptable discourse, and that lowering of discourse led to acceptable behavior, such as 2 assassination attempts. So all I would warn the left is, I think it's time to stop this, because if you continue this rhetoric, somebody, as this person in Indiana or this minister in Tennessee, is going to openly call for violence, if they have not already, against one of the most iconic Americans in our history. And when that happens, the responsibility is going to be on you. So it's time to tone down the rhetoric and stop comparing a Renaissance American citizen, to one of the worst mass murderers in history.
Victor David Hanson is that guy's name, and it's so true. It's very easy advice for these people. You got to stop. You got to stop ranting and raving. You look stupid.